Hello, everyone. Welcome to the StoryTerrace Mother's Day webinar. Uh, Thanks for joining us. My name is Alex Evangelist. I'm one of the sales representatives here. I'm going to be walking you through a few things. I'm going to introduce you to some people who have written books with us. Uh, Author Gail and her son Sam did a Mother's Day project we were just saying 2024. And I'll introduce you to them, and I'll also walk you through the process of making a book and describe the company and answer some questions along the way. But first, I'll introduce Gail. Uh, Gail was the author of the book. She'll be participating in the webinar as well. Sam gave her the book as a gift, and Gail participated and did the interviews with an author. So if you don't mind, say hello. This is Gail and also her son, Sam.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I believe they're both checking in from the Northeast, and I'm in the Midwest in Chicago. And I just welcome. Thanks for everybody for joining us today. The purpose of the webinar is really just to go through what the company is all about and just make it easy for you to see what makes a good book and the process of getting it all done. There's a lot of moving parts, and we take a lot of pride in the process, but of course, the end result as well. And getting to see Gail and Sam again after doing this, it really helps us establish a good relationship because this was a really important project for Gail and especially for Sam. Sam, how did you first hear about us? You know, what kind of led you to reach out to us when you decided to do this project?
Yeah, I was actually having dinner with a couple of our neighbors, and the husband of that couple was in the middle of writing a story. I think his was about both of his parents, and so he was right in the midst of it, and he started telling us about it, and it immediately felt like the type of thing that I wanted to do.
Oh, perfect. So we do get a lot of word of mouth referrals,
Mhm.
and it really is helpful because it really is a great way to get introduced to new people. Gail, what was it like when he told you about the project?
Well, it was a very special birthday gift for me from Sam and his wife, Allison. And I was very touched because I'd never heard about this. And to write something about your life, it was like, what do I say? I really had to do a lot of thinking for it before I even embarked on working with um, with you guys.
Sam, what did you think uh, was going to be Gail's reaction? You know, had you thought about it? Have she ever mentioned it before? I'm always curious.
Yeah, I feel like we may have joked at some point, and I can't remember if we had joked with her or she had joked with us, but the sort of the amount, like her life, like you could make it into a book, you could make it into a movie, just the amount that had happened and the journey and just all the twists and turns. And so it was one of those things where in my mind, I remember thinking like, here's that book, like the thing that we were talking about, jokingly actually would be a pretty amazing thing. And I would say we were probably doing it as much for my mom as we were doing it for me, for my wife, my brother, my sister, our kids. Like we were also thinking like, man, that it would be great to have that book or that movie, concept captured for us. And so, many of the stories were stories I know I could have told myself, but the idea of having them told in her voice and then the full narrative told in her voice was just something that we didn't want to miss out. And we sort of always thought that my mom's life had been that type of thing that you could write a book about. So we did.
Yeah, perfect. A lot of the books that we do, a lot of the introductions that we have are if I'm getting to know someone that wants to start a project, it really does start with why are you doing this? What's motivating you to do it? And more often than not, it is to preserve someone's legacy for stories that somebody knows, just like Sam had said he's heard a lot of these stories or he's really familiar with his family history. But I know that he has children, and the family has grandchildren. They were a lot younger at the time. These stories are going to live on forever, so it really helps to be, it shows when the family's excited to preserve these memories, and it usually shows with the author as well. It seems like Gail, you were excited just as much.
Yes.
And that's perfect. So I'll move on to the some of the history of our of Story Terrace. Also, after that, I'm going to go through the how we create these books. Also, we'll have a few questions that you guys provided, and we have a gift at the end usually to help people get motivated to get their Mother's Day gift as well. So, if we can move on to the quick story of Story Terrace slide. Yeah, our I believe we've been around for just over 10 years, and the company started uh, just like Sam's project, right? We want to preserve some stories. I believe our founder Rutger was hoping to maybe found himself a little behind the eight ball after some relatives had passed and wasn't able to document a lot of these stories, right? So it motivated him to collect everything, uh, get organized so that a lot of the stories of his family could be preserved. And then it just segued into a small business at the time. And since then, it's grown, and we've really served a lot of people, created a lot of books. This number keeps growing. I'm always impressed when I read it. 3,000 books that we've created, and we work with about 600 ghostwriters. Um, I talk to a lot of the ghostwriters in my role as a sales representative. I'm familiar with plenty of them, but we continue to get more. I think the more that the company grows and the reputation grows, we really do get more and more people they like our mission, right? They really want to help people out because the projects, as you're hearing with Gail and Sam, they're very sincere, right? The interviews are very sincere. The people have a really sincere motivation to keep these stories alive. So that's why I think our writer pool keeps moving. Uh, Also, we're ranked excellent on Google. That's perfect. Next slide, please. So, in particular, what goes into making the perfect Mother's Day gift? In this case, we've created a gift box that's delivered to your door after you've ordered the book. So, if you were to give this to her on or close to Mother's Day, we would send the gift box so that you could present it to her. It comes with I believe, nice pen and a pad, and it describes what the project is all about. It's one thing to hear about it, but usually presenting someone with something tangible is very helpful. Um, we know that this is really important. The process is really important. Doing the project comes with a dedicated project editor. There's a few of us that do that, but it's really important that the relationship between the project editor and the storyteller is pretty tight because they do communicate a lot. So if they have any questions, the project editor is always available. After that, there's a matched writer, and which is more so important than probably any other relationship. Um, I know, Gail, you picked a few writers. I think we gave you a few options, but I think you landed on one that worked out very well. It's
Yes.
it's very, very important. We don't throw you our entire list of writers, but you'll have a conversation with your project editor, and they will make sure that it's the right writer. It also comes at your approval.
I think, Alex, this is a critical step because you're sharing very personal stories with the writer. And, trying to capture it in a few chapters is very difficult. So you need somebody who can understand the flow of where you're going, what's critical, what's important to you. So I think selecting the right writers is critical in my books.
Thank you. I agree. And it's really important that the relationship that you have is goes both ways, right? You will approve the writer, but also I always like to emphasize that the writer approves the storyteller. The writer approves the
Mm-hmm.
project. When the project starts, or if I'm explaining it, or if I'm kind of explaining how it's going to get set up. I don't know who the writer is going to be, but you'll approve the writer, and the writer approves the
Mm.
storyteller, and it just ensures that it's all very organic. And it gives us a lot of confidence that the project's going to go smoothly from that point. As we are agreeing, it's a very important step. Um, so the interviews are crucial. I'll go over them in the next steps. There's also we develop the manuscript after the interviews. You do graphic design, you do photo design. We print and deliver the finished book, and then sometimes we can also publish the book online. So I'll go through these in a little bit more detail now. If you can go through the next slide. So this is just details about the steps of the project, and Gail and Sam, you can please throw in some details as you remember them. I know it was a while ago, but this is really the steps to get everything finished. The project editor is really going to take a moment to explain the entire process from start to finish. Uh, I'm not aware Sam did, because sometimes when someone else sets up a project, if you're setting
Mm.
it up for your mother, uh, Gail, did you participate in the conversation with the project editor, or Sam, did you set it up and then pass it on to Gail? Do you recall?
Yeah, I think I ended up staying connected. The project editor was really sort of the project manager for us of everything. And so part of it is I knew the amount of time it was going to take for my mom in the interviews. And so I kind of said, well, have that largely run through me. And so I think our project editor would just reach out to both of us on things, but then I could help with
Yeah.
some of the more process steps because the actual interviews themselves, I actually didn't participate in. That was just my mom and our writer.
Excellent. Perfect. So,
I need to get a power cord. My battery's running low.
all right. The people are different, relationships are different. Some people are really hands-on. Some people will call us and simply pass the project on to their parents. Some people set everything up and simply have the writer reach out to the storyteller. So every instance is different, and it's usually my role and the project editor's role to sort of feel that out. When we do everything correctly from the get-go, it really puts everybody in a comfortable spot throughout the entire project. So there's a lot of questions up front in setting it all up, just so that it goes smoothly towards the end, and it works really well. We're big on over communication to a fault at the beginning, but the relationship with the project editor and the storyteller and the purchaser, it's very valuable. Soon after that, we do the writer introduction. Like I said, we don't want to give you the entire list, but the project editors at that point have talked a lot to you. They know they know ahead of time what the book is going to be about. Is it focused on a certain subject? Is it a family history book? Are they, do they have goals in mind for the book? All of that informs the writer match. So, as I will emphasize, the writer match comes at your approval. It's extremely important, and it really kicks off the project on the right foot. After that, we send along a questionnaire, and the questionnaire in this case, usually when somebody sets it up for a parent, I've noticed that the family fills out the questionnaire. What are the things that you want us to ask
Mm.
your mother or your parent? What are the things that you find are most important? But what did we do in your case? Did you fill it out yourself, Gail, or did the family fill it out?
I remember sort of coming up with an outline, because mine was just not personal story, but it was also I'm a working person. So I had balancing work life, a lot of questions on that. Um,
Ah,
so
correct.
so I remember that was very critical, developing the outline of what we can talk about, because that's only limited space and time. So developing that was important
That's
upfront.
that's excellent. Usually when we set up the projects, we're trying to determine, how much space do we need, how many hours for the
Mm.
interviews, how long should the book be, and it's usually based on a few factors, but one's budget, one's enthusiasm, how long they want to put into the book.
Yeah.
It's all very relative. More time is more space, more stories, maybe more details. Um, but there is usually a finite amount of time. So the questionnaire can be a very powerful tool that I always recommend people use as much as possible. Gail, in your case, you were, you had mentioned that you were speaking to your grandchildren who are all females, and that you were, you wanted to talk to them a lot about what they might encounter in, the real world, in the workplace. And that's
Yeah.
such, that's such a powerful topic and it's so important. The writer, they want to make sure that they get plenty of time for that.
Mm.
Um, so letting them know that ahead of time, it sort of greases the wheels, right? Let's make
Yeah.
sure that there's ample time for everything so that we can, make sure that we touch on that. And that questionnaire really helps that. It's very important. Sam, did you read the questionnaire at all, or did that make its way to?
I I think I played a pretty secondary role. I remember my mom, I might have taken a read through it, but the thing I do remember right around this time in the process that my mom and I talked a lot about was, there's a version of this as, our book was, say, 100 pages, I think. There's, and even in 200 or 300, whatever you pick, there's no way to capture the fullness of somebody's life in all the details. So a couple of the things we had talked about that we really wanted to make sure came through. One was not we didn't want it to be a high level biography, like a chat GPT summary of her life that said, in this year, this happened, in this
Mm.
year, this happened, in this year, this, that,
Yeah.
that to us felt like just documenting facts it didn't seem like it did justice to my mom's story that we wanted to tell. We wanted to tell some of the more complex parts of it. I mean, even the title of it, Pioneer from Panchgani, was about the first, doing new things and breaking into new areas that hadn't been done, whether that's, moving to a new country, being the first person to go to a school as a woman, what have you. But we also said the interesting part were the stories. And so we had to figure out how to tell the overall narrative, but we wanted to tell it through specific stories, like the skirt or the dress that your dad wasn't happy that you were
Mm.
like. We wanted that level of detail, but if you go to that level of detail everywhere, it's a 3,000 page book. So the idea of here's the overall narrative we're trying to tell, but then how do we pick the right stories to help bring that to life so it doesn't just feel like a high level description. I remember around this time in the process is where we started to gravitate on that as our vision. And
Yeah.
then obviously our the ghostwriter did an excellent job of bringing then that to life.
And I think
Perfect.
that
Thank
what
you.
Sam said is key because you don't want it to be, oh, in 2018 I did this, in 24 I did this. We want to make it interesting for at least the grandchildren to read it, but also things that they may not think are critical in their life, but were very critical to me and meant something and were turning points in what I was doing. So that was what I was trying to get across and to the to my children, but more importantly to the grandchildren.
Perfect. Thank you. That's very helpful. So I would refer again to the importance of the writer match there, right? Um, because that's a whole different interview. What
Hmm.
you were describing, the details that the type of questions that they're going to follow up with. That's a very specific type of response that they're looking for. Whereas some people do want a very they do want a very black and white sort of
Mm.
chronological telling of their lives,
Yeah.
equally as valuable in its own right, but it takes a certain, it's a certain kind of writer that is going to interview you in a certain kind of way.
Mm.
So just like I'll keep saying, that all the communication up front, make sure that when everything does happen, when the interviews do take place, everybody is on the same page, and it really makes for an efficient experience for everybody. And it works. We've been doing it a while, and every project we get a little bit smarter. But that
Mm.
that writer match and that questionnaire, it really serves a purpose well, and it seems like it functioned in this case. So that's great to hear. Um, Moving on, where are we? Questionnaire, the interviews have happened. Um, Writing and editing. We should talk about the interviews, I guess. I mean, it sounds like um, they went very, very well. They were usually about 2 hours each. You did them remotely. I actually didn't
Yes, I did.
did them remotely.
Yeah.
Um, You can do them in person if you would like. A lot sometimes, there's a lot of value for a face-to-face interaction. We do have writers all over the country, all over the world, if not. And doing it face to face, if they're in proximity, there can be some travel time involved. We organize all of that and we make that as easy as possible. We've worked with a lot of these writers over the years, so if they needed to participate or talk to each other over the phone first to get to know each other, we can usually arrange that as well. Um, and it's sort of a balance, right? If doing it in person is a priority, then it most likely needs to be somebody close. But if you're really looking for a writer that with specific talents or interests, doing it remotely opens the door to obviously a universe of availability. So the interviews are usually in a total amount of 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours. Truth be told, we can do anything, right? We like to keep a little bit of a structure, but if you need to add more hours or if it comes down to it and you've come to the end and you want to upgrade a little bit, there's always some flexibility. It is structured, but not too rigid in that sense. So after the interviews, so at that point you've approved the writer, you have done the questionnaire, you've done the interviews, you've given us a lot of content. We're then going to produce a table of contents, and we also produce a sample chapter of the writing. So those are incredibly important. Everything is still kind of in flux at that point. Nothing is set in stone, but the table of contents and the sample chapter are where things kind of get nailed down. So the table of contents, obviously, just like it sounds, chapter one, chapter two. How are we going to structure this book? What is the format? A lot of people want to do some type of vignette structure. Some people want to do a flashback. Some people are very chronological. The project editor and usually the writer have some ideas, and usually the authors, the participants do as well. It is at that point that we nail some things down. This is what we think the table of contents should be like, and we show that to you, right? We present it to you. Usually that's a point of collaboration, making sure that you approve each chapter. There's usually, some changes along the way, but that's a pretty good roadmap for the rest of the project. Do you recall any of that? Do you recall the table of contents and the sample
I
chapter
think
portion?
that was important as we went through it to keep us focused on the conversations. So
Did
I think
you were
we
you surprised?
adjusted
Did
it.
you?
We adjusted it, I think, during some of the interviews, as you said, wasn't set in concrete. So it was a good sort of a project outline, I would call it. Where are we going?
Sure.
What are we going to
So it
talk
sounds like you were
about?
doing it as the interviews were
Yeah,
happening
yeah,
and then solidified it
yeah.
afterwards. I see. The sample chapter also comes in that case. People write from all different perspectives, point of views. At this point, it's very easy to change the point of view or to kind of get a different tone. A legacy project, a chronological project, it usually is, a little bit more linear, doesn't have too much emotion in it. But sometimes if people are really doing some reflecting or if they have some point of views, the emotions come out. So it can obviously have a huge difference if it's third person or first person. Whatever the case may be, we want to give you some examples of what it sounds like. Is there going to be a narrator? Is it all going to be past tense, right? There are many different options. And of course, we want to get that established before the project heads off, right? Because it's much easier to make those changes and kind of hear the nuances in the first chapter so that we can have confidence in the rest of the book.
Mhm.
So do you recall the sample chapter? Any additions that you made there?
I remember the first chapter when she brought it back. I was pleased to see how she had approached the narrative. It wasn't
Oh, good.
a documentation of, events but she put it in a very, some sort of a readable perspective. Somebody would enjoy reading it. Um,
Excellent.
so I think that made me feel good when I got the first chapter, that this is how she's going to write it. And as we were going through at some points, we did get into sort of she did this, and we said, no, no, let's get back to not just making it a boring listing of activities, but emphasizing certain things that I wanted to bring out in the book. So
Ah,
so it helped, and that's important, to have that dialogue with the writer constantly, so that you can state what you want stated in that book and how you want it stated. And we
perfect.
had a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah, there's the back and forth between the writer and the authors, we like to keep it content
Yeah,
driven, right? At that point, that's all you should be speaking of. And it sounds
mm,
like you guys are communicating very well.
yeah,
It
yeah.
sounds like the work of an excellent project editor
Mhm.
and an excellent writer match. So that's good to
Yeah.
hear. But it really is important that you're both on the same page as far as your, changes, right? So that you're both kind of focusing on keeping the narrative going. So
Yeah.
that's
I
And
would
great.
you
also,
have to invest time, your own time. You have to read the chapter and say, okay, what are you really trying to get at? So I think it's important for the author to also invest a lot of time reading it, trying to understand what are you trying to get, what's the messaging you want to give.
Sure. And
Okay.
it's also we're the writers, of course, they want to get the message across, but your feedback's so important, right? And we're always
Mhm.
constantly really heavily suggesting feedback just so that we can make sure that it is correct. But participating on your end, it's good that you note that because it does take
Mhm.
a lot of review, a lot of making sure that things are correct because there are a lot of details flying back and forth.
I was also going to add the first chapter, that was the moment it started to feel real. Like everything up to that point was preparing for something or planning for something, but it actually, it's the first chapter of the book. And I remember we chose to write it in first person. And I think, you can hear just even the way that my mom and I are describing it. We wanted to, when you read the book, we wanted it to feel like when my mom is telling us the story. So it says, I did this and I felt this way. And, but then I remember reading that first chapter, it was just sort of like, oh wow, this is like the first time now that sort of the work up to that point has been leading to that. And you can just imagine now extend that across all the different chapters of her life that we've outlined. It was pretty cool.
That's great. Yeah, I've set up so many of these projects. I've talked to so many people from the beginning, and I've read a handful of them. But I'm a little bit removed in the middle, and I hear all about I hear things that are going on and how the projects develop, and I really only hear at the end when the projects are done. But that's such an interesting perspective. Like, what is the moment when you really really felt great that this was going on?
Yeah.
Because prior to that there's a lot of that's up in the air. There's a lot of decisions that you're making. There's a lot of you're purging all of these memories.
Mhm.
So as I'll keep saying, right, all of this preparation from the beginning, it really keeps things on the track. And it's great to hear that you had a moment like that. I hope that there were plenty more after that. Uh, moving on, after the interviews happen, after the table of contents, after the sample chapter, all of that gets approved. Those are, like I said, the book is set in stone. We write the book from there. And then I think it's a little bit of maybe a quieter time for you two after that, as far as content uh, interview wise. But then we start to work on the book cover and the photo design. I haven't mentioned it yet, but a lot of this work is delivered through our bookmaker portal, which is sort of like the editing notification portal that allows everybody to check the status of each project, right? You have a project editor, you have a sales representative, everybody's available, but it's not always necessary to reach out. The status is always notified in the bookmaker portal. At this point, we're doing the interviews. At this point, we're waiting for you to approve the table of contents, or we're waiting for your notes. So, um, when you submit photographs, when you choose the cover photo, and when you put the quotes and everything like that, you would submit them through the bookmaker platform. Uh,
Sam,
it's,
didn't Annika pick the title of the book? Was it?
Yeah, I think it would, I don't remember exactly the final, but I remember we sort of had a few different ideas and we wanted something that was alliterative, but it was around this time that we were starting to brainstorm title ideas as well. And yeah, we got
so
that crowdsourced other family members for ideas as well.
when did you think of the title? When did you agree of the perfect title? Did you have one at the beginning? Did you start and then come back around? I usually notice people have a good idea and they change it and
When
then they come back.
when he gave me the gift, well, everyone was here when he gave me the gift. There was another book that had the title pasted on it. You gave me a sort of a sample empty blank notebook, but I think on that was the title Pioneer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, Alex, in some, I hadn't remembered it this way, but this was an early idea. And then we sort of didn't really think about it, but wrote the book. But because the theme was about being a pioneer, then we kind of came back and it was, I remember it sort of feeling obvious, like it was, oh, well,
Mhm.
that's actually the right title that we've been driving towards. I had forgotten that though, Mom, that
Yeah,
we'd come up with one just as sort of a cute example, but it ended up being that or very similar to what
yeah.
we had with.
And
Great.
Panchgani is the small town I am from, where I grew up. So,
That's lovely. So the book cover is incredibly important. Like as everyone's seeing it, it gets a lot of discussion and people really enjoyed it. Usually everybody participates. I'm always interested to find out what people choose. I speak to people at the very beginning of the entire process, and the title it always is at the forefront. People bring it up very soon, and I always say, well, you don't have to make that decision from until the very end, but they always want to tell me the title anyway, and
mhm.
it always seems to stay the same, or it kind of gets a hint at the beginning. So the title, the cover photo, the photos inside, the project editor helps you arrange it. We also have a graphic designer. I'm not sure how involved they were when you guys were doing the project, but at this point, we have a graphic designer that gets involved in certain aspects of certain covers. When the book is done, we show you everything, and it's sort of a grand PDF, all of the um, all the text, all the content, all the pictures. Sam was saying that he spent a lot of time going through making sure that everything was edited correctly. The round of edits at the end is basically your chance to review pretty much everything. Go through every detail, confirm the dates, confirm the quotes on the pictures. That's the point where we go through and just make sure that all the dates and details, storyline, everything is correct. So that also gets approved on the bookmaker portal. And then I believe there's just an approval box. You check the layout, you check the design. When everybody approves everything, we send you 4 copies of the book. I'm not sure, did you guys order any more than
Yeah.
4?
Four
We
was
usually
actually
have
perfect. It was,
4 copies.
yeah,
Uh, do you guys, do you happen to have a copy
yeah.
within reach?
We both
Ah,
do.
Yeah, we do.
lovely. So those look great. So the copies are hardcover. They're sort of they're archival material. They're maybe above bookstore quality. They're extremely nice. They're string bound. They last forever, and we're really pleased with our printer. Over the years we keep developing the relationship, and the books just get of a higher and higher quality. So we're really glad the way that they come out. You can always order more, but 4 is the amount that we usually send. We send you a PDF of the book if you're looking to maybe share it, individual parts. And then also you own the rights of the book. I'm not sure if that was too crucial for you two, but the publishing rights, the distribution rights, if you did want to give it to anybody else or make as many copies as you wanted, it's always an option, and you hold the all of those rights towards the end of the book. And you can share the copy with whoever you would like. In some cases, people put the book online. So if you wanted to make it available on Amazon or any other book distribution sites, we can always help people with that. Uh, I'm always interested in how people's books do online. Some of them just kind of live up there forever. Some people have their own social media outlets that they can put them on. It's really impressive the way that people can distribute their books these days. But we focus on getting them created as you see fit. As you can see, there's a lot of approval process along the way. And I noticed that people come to us because they're looking to do something real, sincere. They're not trying to change the story or sensationalize anything. The stories don't need it. It's a very real telling of someone's life, and that's why they want to make sure that they approve all the details and work with some very intentional, sincere people along the way. So let's see. After that, I guess yeah, were there anything else you would like to share? Any surprises or things that you didn't expect when you started the project? Because at this point, you had started the project. We went through the entire process of creating the book. A lot of the storytelling is sometimes can be a surprise, right? You went into it thinking it was going to turn out one way, and when the book was done, I'm wondering if the book sort of ended up as you expected.
I mean, Mom, you should say if you agree. I remember you said this the first time during the interviews, and then during the editing, reading it. But if you'd asked me before we started versus what I was hearing from my mom, it sounded like it was a much more emotional process than I was expecting. Like
Hmm.
in some ways, telling the stories to somebody else and to a person you've never met before, it almost felt like, I guess I was expecting it more as a recounting, as opposed to going back into those moments. And then the themes, and then my mom wrote I don't know if it was called an epilogue, but sort of a chapter at the end that were sort of reflections. Like those things, I guess I had not been anticipating before we started the project, that it would be as emotional of a process going back through so much of it. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. But I'm curious, Mom, if I heard that right.
It definitely was a very emotional process because you're going back through good times, um, and difficult times, but you're also looking back and say, okay, that's my past, and your future is not that long further ahead. So I think it does become an emotional sort of how are the children going to react to it, the grandchildren especially,
Sure.
as they get older and really understand things better, because they were much younger when we did the book. So yeah, that was it was an emotional process.
How did you feel prepared throughout the process? Um, were there any points in the interviews that you felt differently than other interviews? Because, you break them up into sessions, and I always wonder how it goes in the middle, right? Maybe you
Mm.
rush into them with some certain things that you're eager to talk about, and then I wonder how it is in the middle. Does it change each time, or were they pretty much the same?
It does, but because of my journey of where I came from, from a very small town, from a relatively poorer family to where I had grown in, I had to find my way and really be as the book says, pioneer breaking into the world of work in the US, where you're the only female in many of these places. So how do you deal with that? Um, I don't know. I hope my computer doesn't die on me. I've plugged it in. I think that was very, emotional, but there was sort of sections that you go through and where I am today with my family. So yes, there are different emotions that you go through.
It seemed like you were very well prepared. I don't know if you thought it, or it seemed like you maybe had thought about doing this prior to that, but
Hmm.
I often when someone is setting up a project for a family member or for another person, I usually encourage them to express that there isn't too much preparation necessary, right? There's a bit of a window in the time that you start to the time that you get your
Hmm.
writer and that your time to start the interviews. we really set you up for success to make sure that you are prepared for everything that you're about to embark on. But it seems like you were well prepared as well. It sounds like as soon as the interview started, you knew what you were getting into.
Yeah,
So that's good to hear.
it's your story. It's your life that you're going through. So the question comes up at what during these periods as you're going through or the chapters you've taken, because it's not um, what was most significant? Why did I pick that chapter? What was important? Like when I had children, that's a life event change. So I
Sure.
wanted to bring up having, the three of them. So when I went to college here in the US, which was such a different experience from my college in India, um, where I was here in the US, I was the only female. That's a pretty unnerving experience to go through.
Sure.
Um, and so those were the sort of significant changes I saw in my life, which were a little different than when somebody who's been raised and born in the US today. So there were definitely um, times when I had to really think through what do I want to bring across um, in the stories that I was putting up there.
Something that I often notice that the writers do, and I would think that they did this more so for you as well. They're trying to act like the audience, right? They're trying to think about who's going to be reading this book. And in your case, you've got uh, some very specific people that you want to read this book. Your family, your grandchildren, who were probably, well, were obviously younger when this book was finished. I'm sure that there were some things that they just weren't ready to hear, or it just wasn't the right time. When
Mm,
the writer knows who the audience is, when they know the purpose of this book, it really informs the interviews. And I it sounds like that really came through. Like in this
mm.
case, particularly, you've
Yeah.
got a very particular story, and you were a strong individual among a large group. So I think I hope that that translated very well for your family and for your grandchildren. I'm sure that if they haven't read it yet, it's going to have a large impact as long as they have a chance to read it. That's great.
Yeah, they all read it right away. I one other observation to your point about what was surprising is I guess if you'd asked me, I would have said I expect we'll spend the same amount of time on each, say decade. And instead, the story, the amount of time is much more focused on sort of chapters. I mean, the chapter names capture it,
Oh,
but
right.
it's, early childhood, it's sort of college time, time in India. It's then coming to the US, then it's starting, the beginning of her career in the US. And and so actually in some ways there's sort of more time spent in some areas, less time spent in other areas if you looked at it from sort of chunks of time, but the chapters actually make perfect sense. And so that was probably something I wasn't expecting, sort of there are periods where just intentionally because of the arc of the story my mom wanted to tell, that part was, may have been a great part of her life, but wasn't necessarily as critical to that story. And so it got fewer pages, but when she went into more detail on other things that were more relevant. And then again, I think the table of
Cool.
contents was important there as the organizing principle for each of those chapters that then fit into a narrative. It wasn't just a recounting of her life. It's a story about why her life played out the way it did and what it felt like along the way.
Excellent. It's great to hear. We put a lot of work in the structure and all this, and it changes a lot, but it really, the core of it is setting it all up correctly at the beginning, and then your approvals along the way. I mean, it's your family story. So to hear how this is all kind of points back to all of that is very nice to hear. So I think now we should move on to the Q&A, which was submitted by our home viewers. And I'll just sort of read through some of these. I think that should be able to get through most of them. Can I give a book to multiple storytellers if English isn't their first language? Yes, you can. And if English isn't their first language, we can look for a writer that either speaks their language or in most cases is comfortable with the culture, with the language. Like I explained earlier, we have a lot of different writers. So the the purpose of the project editor, one of their roles is to make sure that we have the right writer. And like I said, you approve the writer. So we'll either look for someone that speaks the language, is familiar with the language, and in many cases now, uh, we're a lot better at just reaching out, finding new writers that can fill the role. And we've done that very successfully recently. And I'm very pleased how fast we've been doing it. Our outreach has really increased with projects like this, and the more books that we do, the more people uh, not only create books on their own, but we attract a lot of different writers. So that pool has been growing as well. So yes, you can give a book to multiple storytellers. In that case, specifically, the project editor arranges interviews with different people. So sometimes people will do a book for a family member and then they want to introduce them to their friends. It just is a matter of organizing, and it works very well. What's something we wouldn't know to ask or expect about this process? I'll leave that to Gail or Sam. Anything? Hmm.
I think when you start going through the interview process and you start breaking down what pieces do you want to talk about, like Sam mentioned, my early years, my coming to US was a big change, and then going through school over here and getting married. I think it helps you start talking about these, and I don't think there's anything you need to think about ahead of time because as you're doing the outline, you're going to be changing that outline a little bit along the way. And,
Mhm.
you suddenly remember, oh, yeah, this was a very significant piece of my life. And it comes naturally after a while because those are the basics that made you who you are today. So you can go back. And yes, at times I found myself saying, oh, I missed this piece in a particular chapter. Let's add this over here, as opposed to chapter 3 or 4. So you have that flexibility of doing that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I touched on that, but there is it is inevitable that you will remember something.
Yeah,
So I've had cases where people they feel very eager to just do it all in once, and I've never seen anyone do that. But they always take a pause and they always find it
yeah,
important to this can get very real. It can get very heavy. I mean, it's
yeah,
it's important to take a break. So, but also things come up, you remember things, and also very importantly, you're giving the writer a moment to stop taking notes and review everything so that
yeah.
they can be an active um, participant in the interviews. They want to do more than just take the notes of what you're saying. So the breaks are really crucial.
The two things I would have said on this, well, first, referring back to it feeling like it was a more emotional process than I was expecting it would be. And in hindsight, it seems obvious, but before we started, the other thing though I would add that we didn't mention is um, there are more steps to making a book than somebody who's never written a book
Hmm.
would guess. And so I remember, a perfect example was, okay, now it's time to pick the pictures. I was like, well, how are we going to pick pictures? And it was like, well, now it's time to write the captions for the pictures. And so it was the bookmaker portal and it was our editor that like this is the type of thing that could expand infinitely, but having those sort of milestones that you're working towards, and they never felt unrealistic, but sometimes there were moments where we'd say, yeah, no, really, this weekend I've got to read through my last version of this weekend so that we can stay and get it done. Because ultimately, we didn't want it to drag out infinitely, and so we got it done on time. But the number of steps involved in producing a book for somebody who's not in the industry was just a
Yeah.
good reminder. And again, I think you guys did a nice job of both laying out what the full project plan looks like. And then I think there was little, green circles on Bookmaker that's like, okay, these 3 steps are done. Here's the next one that's in process. You always knew where you were. But I think, I would have said simplistically, it's do some interviews, read a draft, done. And there's just a lot more that goes into it for
Yeah.
that maybe I would have guessed.
Well, that is good to hear. That's excellent feedback because there was a time where projects did go on forever and they could just keep developing. And we really, we weren't sure whether to encourage people to really expand everything or encourage them to keep on moving. There's something to be said for both sides of it. But at this point, at least keeping everybody aware of the status I know is crucial because we want to get the project done, right? People come in with some excitement, with some momentum. Usually there is a maybe an event or something, so we can move very quickly, but we are very paced. Usually from maybe 5 to 7 months is a good window of the length of time, and uh, it seems like we keep everybody well aware of the
Mhm.
timeline. I think that's established now more than ever because it really helps everybody keep moving along. So great, that's helpful. What else can we say? What preparation is required before starting? Do I need my own manuscript or outline? Well, that's such an excellent question as well. I usually encourage people to get moving, get involved, get it going, because there's enough time for you to prepare yourself after you've got become started. And also, nothing is more motivating than having started, right? Once you know that it's happening, when like you're saying, the check boxes, the timeline, it's not really to um, push you along. It just keeps the ball rolling, and you'll be very motivated to know that, you've got an interview coming up or we're waiting to speak with a writer. It kicks people into gear. And when I hear people say, "All right, maybe I'll get started after I I set up some notes or I write my own outline," as important as that is, we've built that all in so that you don't have to think about it too much. There is an outline that you'll do. There isn't a table of contents that you'll approve. It's all of these questions that I'm about to read. We've heard them all before, and we've built this entire structure to make sure that it all flows into the process, and it works really well. Can you conduct interviews in person? You absolutely can. What does a typical interview format look like? I don't think they're all typical. They're very unique. Each one is different. Personalities are different. The writers are different. The authors are different. They all revolve around the purpose of the book and usually kind of who the audience is and the size of the book, right? So each detail about the project is going to inform what the interview is like. If you did a book that was 4 hours of interviews, about 7,500 words, it's about 60 pages. That's usually for someone that either wants to tell one quick story. This happened to me. I need to get the book out. I want to tell people about it. It's very straightforward. Very relatively, 6 hours of interviews is about 100 pages. That is usually if somebody has a handful of stories and they're also trying to sort of point, make a point, have a statement, bring all the stories together. I noticed that the middle-sized book really has a function there. A longer book, 10 hours of interviews, is a little over 100 pages, 120 or 30. That's usually if you want to just talk a lot, tell all the stories, or get very detailed. So each interview is it's unique, but the writer acts as a really good pace car. They know what the purpose of the book is, so they're going to move you along accordingly. And if people want to digress, you can't stop them. So, if they're going to go on tangents, they're going to go on tangents. It's the most beautiful part of the entire project. I also recommend if you are setting this up for a family and you fill out the questionnaire, you want to put some things that you don't want them to talk about. That can also be a very important tool. Things that you know that they're going to talk about a lot. You can suggest that the writer, keeps the ball moving. It's a really helpful process as well. How long does the whole process take? 5 to 7 months is a good estimate from a very early on point of view. The project manager knows absolutely how long it'll take. So from my perspective, 5 to 7 months is what I usually say, and then the project manager usually will tell you a little bit more specifically because they know all the variables. If you do it in person, it might take a little bit longer. 10 hours of interviews obviously takes a little bit longer, so I would lean on the project manager for that. How can we capture someone's sense of humor with a few interviews? It's extremely challenging, and it's an excellent question. I don't know much about sense of humor personally, but I know that some of our writers are uh, they find it very challenging to bring out people's personalities. So I'll lean on it's incredibly important that you find the right writer. If this is going to be someone that you want to bring out their humor, you want this to be a lighthearted book, the writer is going to be, or the interviewer is going to be a very, very crucial part of that.
Yeah.
Um, some of our writers are, they're journalists, they're fact finders, they're very straightforward. I wouldn't lean on them to, try to get somebody laughing or, dig too deep into the emotional side of it. And on the opposite of that, some of them are, have families of their own, are very funny people. They're very lighthearted from the very get-go. So um, if you establish that, if you were to tell me during our first call, my brother or my father, whoever's doing this interview is he loves to tell his own jokes or he's really hilarious, let him start talking. The writer's going to respond to that. So how what was the tone of your interviews, Gail? Do you find that you did most of the talking? Were the
Um,
It was a little bit of both,
yeah,
but what?
I did most of the talking. I think it's very important when you get the drafts that you edit them to make sure that um, the message is the way you want it conveyed. Um, I didn't want this to be a very totally serious document. I wanted it to be some fun stories, and I think that was good. She captured them. So, but you do have to spend time editing the work to make sure that you've got your tone correctly in there. Because as you say, the writers
Yes.
are journalists, they write down the facts. And you
Right.
say, okay, we need to take a spin on this one.
It's good that you were able to provide that feedback. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Let's see. Can you assist me in publishing my memoir? Yes, we can. It's usually that's handled obviously when the book is finished. We have a few suites where we can put your book on Amazon. As we all probably know, Amazon, they sort of sell everything. So among them are plenty of books. I think that they're the largest bookseller. If you were to put the book online, we make it look great. We associate it with other kind of like-minded books. We show you how to set the pricing. We build the page that people can click on. We give you the link, the QR code, and then when somebody purchases it online, Amazon prints the book, puts it in an envelope, and then they mail the copy to whoever purchased it, and then the money or the funds for that go directly to you. We're sort of out of it at that point. There's also a sort of an upgraded publishing suite where we can help you market the book and promote it online through social media, through PR. We've got a just sort of an upscale event that way, and it's just different than just putting it online. So if people can market the book themselves, just putting it on Amazon is helpful. If they'd like our assistance, we've had some really great success lately with opportunities like that. So yes, we can help. Are you able to pick up the DNA genealogy of my grandparents? I have no idea what the answer is to this question. I know that we've tried to do it, and in some cases we have, but uh, I'm not sure if we do it consistently. Um, but we can always try. And I think that most people have ended up finding it themselves and putting it in the book, maybe as a graphic or a picture. So we're always interested in trying these things, and people come to us with all types of interesting additions. We've learned a lot over the years, so the things that we can do, we do really well. But if you do have other things you want to put in, we put in family trees, sometimes put in newspaper articles. They don't just have to be pictures. We can put anything you'd like in the book with a little bit of preparation. Can I speak to a few writers at the conclusion of the seminar? Sure. I think that they're asking if they'd like to get in touch with some writers. We have a lot of writer bios on our website. There are more than a few, if not all of them. And if you ever have any questions about getting in touch with the writers or learning about more about them, we can send you their bios. And if you'd like to set up a phone call to start a project or learn more about them or get introduced to one of the writers, I can help you with that as well. My contact info will be on the end of this presentation. How can I stay motivated to complete the story? I would just keep in touch with your bookmaker. Keep in touch with your writer, keep in touch with your project editor. We know the timeline. We're going to keep you very motivated, but on your own personal uh, point of view, start the project with a really good intention. Know why you're doing it and know who's gonna read it. When I have these first conversations with people, I grill them as to why they're doing the project. Because if they don't have a good reason why, one, they're not going to get started. Or if they do, they'll lose motivation in the middle. So you really have to have a really good intention. What am I doing this for? Am I trying to change the world? Some people are trying to do that. Am I trying to influence a very small demographic? Just stay focused and, have confidence in what you're doing. I mean, this is your project. You've decided to get it done. We're going to do a great job, but staying motivated is making sure that you're surrounded by a lot of positive people and people that want you to get it done. And that's what we'll definitely do. But if you're
One,
going to stay motivated, be motivated from the very, very start, and it really goes a long way. Yes, Sam?
I was just gonna add one thought. Sorry to interrupt you. As once you're then into the project, like I would say there's like never a good or a bad time. Like it would have been easy to say, well, but this is a busy period at work. The reality is the deadlines had enough time built in there that that was super helpful to us because then
Great.
we didn't spend too much time in any one phase. So once it came time, it's like, okay, we've got a month to find the pictures. That's plenty of time. Not if you wait 28 days and then get started, but it's enough time. And so I found it meeting the individual deadlines kept us, it always felt like we were moving forward. But if we had said, can we just have 2 more months to find the photos?
Sure.
Then I think our motivation over time would have been, okay, well, now it just feels like we're starting to bog down. And so the 5 to 7 months, I actually think it would be bad to do it in a year, even if you could, because I think it's just stretching the work out over more time. And I never found the deadlines to be, the timeline felt to me to have the right amount of padding in it for things that come up in life, but not so much that you would feel like you're spinning your wheels.
That is such an excellent response, Sam. Perfect. We have changed so much as long as I've worked here, and that timeline was always in flux. And I try not to allow people to extend their projects. It's not my role or responsibility, but sometimes when I don't see why not? Why not just let them keep, adding more words or keeping the project going? And the answer is because they lose motivation. They lose the focus. So as much as we want the project to go on, keeping it moving ensures that it's going to be a great book, right? And we want to be consistent with what we do because the more consistency we have, the smarter we get, and it makes for really great projects internally. I think that schedule is very beneficial for both sides. How many words is a good rule of thumb for the recommended length? There's no right or wrong. I would say, depending on the purpose of your book, you can lean on the project editor, you can lean on the salesperson, the people that set it up to help you with that. But it's up to you, right? It's hard to figure that out, having not knowing who answered this question. But in many cases, when someone is trying to figure out how long the book should be, and I'm just beginning to speak with them, I couldn't really give them an honest answer, right? We've just started to talk. I'm trying to figure out why they're writing the book. Probably in most cases, you could write a small book, you can write a very large book. There's many options. So as I mentioned, it's you're it might be dictated by the budget, it might be dictated about your timeline. Something that we often do now is we offer something we call a book taster session, which is where we can interview somebody for an hour prior to doing a project and with the intention of setting up a bit of an outline beforehand. And that's autonomous to this entire project that we've been discussing so far. But what that allows us to do is it allows me to set up a summary for you, talk about your book, and then give you an informed answer to that question. Based on what we just learned after you spoke to one of our writers for an hour, should probably do a book that is, 50,000 words or 5,000 words, right? It helps us narrow that down, and it helps you to speak to somebody creatively, as opposed to just someone that's talking about the format and the structure of the book. So, excellent question. Thank you for that. How can people start writing manually or in the computer, or what format? People can start writing any way they want. They can write with their hands, they can type, they can speak into their phone. But what I would recommend is that you give us a call, talk to us about the purpose of your book, why you want to write the book, and if you haven't started writing your book already, or if your mother or a family member hasn't written it, based on everything that you have seen here, this seems like a very good option as to letting us writing the book for you, because a lot of people are much better at telling their stories. They're much better at thinking about their families, thinking about their legacies, the writing, the process, all of that. We've got it very much buttoned up. So we've gotten very good at it at this point. So that comes to the end of the question and answer. And here's the slide that says exclusive webinar offer. So I believe if you're interested in setting up a book project, there's a $200 discount, depending, regardless of what size the book is. And I think that this is going to extend, as it says, till the 15th. So if you wanted to give someone a gift, Mother's Day, I believe it's this weekend, because I obviously already got my mother a gift and sent it to her. And right, it's on the 10th, but we're going to extend this offer, Pat, into the 15th. If you wanted to set something up, you can go to it online, or you can reach out to myself. Once again, my name is Alex, and my contact information will be on the next slide, probably. Also, it comes with a gift box. These gift boxes are so beautiful. We've done a bunch of them over the years. This is by far my favorite one. The color is great. It's very simple. I believe on the card it explains uh, almost everything I've said on this webinar, but it describes the whole bookmaking process, and it just tells them a little bit about what they're receiving, and it comes with a pen, and I think it's personalized as well. And if there aren't any more questions, which I don't see, I want to thank Gail so much, and Sam, thank you so much. It's
You're
good
very
to
welcome.
meet you both. It's been very great to participate. And that is all for now. I'll leave this contact information up. My name is Alex Evangelist. It has been very nice to speak with you both. If you need anything, Sam and Gail, if you guys need any more help with anything as well, I really do appreciate you participating. Good to see you both, and have a happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
And that's it. That's all for now. Thank you
See you.
much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.